How much should you actually invest in SIP every month? Let's break it down step by step. Many new investors randomly pick 2000, 5000 or 10,000 without really knowing if that's enough. But the truth is, you need a specific SIP amount based on your goals. And here's the tricky part. While calculating SIP, they also assume a certain return percentage. But can we really rely on those assumptions, or is there a better way to do it? That's exactly what we are going to uncover in this video. So the feast is ready, it's time to serve. Now let's take a step back and think about it. Why do we invest in the first place? It's simple. At some point in the future, we are going to need money for different things. And if we start investing today, our money grows over time and helping us to meet those needs. And these are what we call financial goals. There are many ways to figure out how much SIP you need. But the best and most practical method is the goal-based approach. Here's how it works. We all have different financial goals, like buying a bike or car in the next 3 years, covering marriage expenses in 5 years, saving for children's higher education in 10 to 15 years, or even long-term goals like buying a house or planning for retirement in 20 to 25 years. So the first step is simple. List down all your financial goals. To make it super easier, I have a sheet where you can write them down and calculate your ideal SIP amount. You'll find the link in the description. Go ahead and use it. Now that you have got the sheet from the description, let's see how to fill it out step by step. The first step is to write down your financial goals. Whether it's buying a car, saving for marriage expenses, or planning for your child's education. Next, you need to define the timeline. Basically, how many years from now you'll need the money. If you plan to buy a car in 3 years, then enter 3 there. Or if you're saving for marriage expenses 5 years later, enter 5. The more time you have, the more your investments can grow. Now you need to enter the current value of your goal. Basically, how much it costs today. If a car costs 6 lakh today, enter 6 lakh in this column. Or if your expected marriage expenses would be 10 lakhs in today's terms, enter 10 lakh. This is important because future prices will be different due to inflation. Now comes the inflation. While India's official inflation rate is around 4 to 6%, the real impact is usually closer to 8%. And for some specific expenses like education, it can go even higher up to 10%. So when filling this column, use 8% for most goals, and for child education, set it at 10% to be more realistic. Now let's talk about expected returns, which means how much your investment will grow each year. Many people assume high returns, but we need to be more practical. Here's how you should fill it. If your goal is within 3 years, don't put more than 6%, because short-term investment should be in safer options like debt mutual funds or fixed deposits, which don't offer high returns. And for goals beyond 5 years, you can assume 10% returns, because even though equity funds may generate 12% returns, it's before tax. And after taxes, the effective returns comes down to around 10%. So assuming 10% is a safer bet. Once you enter the goal amount, timeline, inflation, and return on investment, the sheet will automatically calculate the future value and the target SIP amount. For example, a 6 lakh car today will cost 7.55 lakhs in 3 years, requiring a SIP of 20,000 per month. Or a 10 lakh marriage expenses today will grow to 14.7 lakhs in 5 years, needing a SIP of 19,000 per month. Once you calculate the SIP required for each goal, the final step is to add them up. For example, SIP for buying a car is 20,000. SIP for marriage expenses 19,000. SIP for house down payment is 22,000 and SIP for child education is 16,000. So your total SIP requirement would be 77,000 per month. This final number is the amount you should ideally invest every month. Now here's an interesting part. This sheet doesn't just give you a single SIP number. It also shows what happens if your investments perform better than expected. If your returns end up being 12, 14 or even 16%, the required SIP amount will change accordingly. But don't get carried away, because higher returns aren't guaranteed, and it's always safer to stick to a realistic 10% assumption while planning. Now that we have calculated the ideal monthly SIP amount, for many of them it might feel like a huge number, something that seems difficult to invest every month. And this is where most people make a big mistake. At this stage, people already know 3 things. The future value of their goal, that is, how much they'll need. Then the timeline, how many years they have, and how much they can afford to invest every month. But here's where things go wrong. Let's say someone has a 10 lakh goal and they want to achieve in 5 years, but they can afford to invest only 10,000 per month. When they enter these numbers, assuming 10 or 12% returns, they realize they won't reach their target. And what do they do next? Instead of adjusting their investment or timeline, they take a shortcut. They increase the expected return percentage to see at what point their goal becomes achievable. For example, they might keep tweaking the return assumption until it reaches their goal. Here it's 20.6%, and then convince themselves that they can achieve this by investing in high risk mutual funds. But here's the problem. Because returns aren't guaranteed, and when the actual returns don't match their unrealistic expectations, they end up disappointed. So here's the golden rule. Never manipulate the expected return rate, because that's something we have no control over. The only things we can control are the timeline and the SIP amount. So if possible, give yourself more time to achieve the goal. But if you want to stick to your timeline, the only solution is to increase your monthly investment. The bottom line is, be realistic. Instead of chasing high returns, focus on increasing what you can control. And that's the only way to securely reach your financial goals. Finally, to wrap it up, now you know exactly how to calculate your ideal SIP amount instead of investing random numbers like 2000 or 10,000. We listed all financial goals, considered timeline, inflation, and expected returns, and found the right SIP for each goal. More importantly, we saw why manipulating returns is a mistake and how adjusting time or investment amount is the right approach. So whether your goal is short term or long term, this method helps you plan realistically and effectively. And that's all for this video. But wait, we have now figured out how much you need to invest every month. But here's the twist. Just investing the right amount isn't enough. Imagine you are making a cricket team. You can't have only batsmen or only bowlers. You need the right balance to win the match. And investing works the same way. If you put everything in equity, you might score big, but you also risk heavy losses. And if you go all in on safe investments, you might never reach your target. So what's the perfect mix? How do you decide the right blend of equity, debt, and gold to hit your financial goals? And that's the lead for my next video, so stay tuned. Until then, this is Sabarish signing off.